Optical switches. No, that can't. Huh, I better read the manual. Hey guys, Hardware Hound here. So what happens when you mix Greek mythology with computer components? Well, you get a company called Gamdias, and so we're going to review a keyboard from them, the Hermes P2. And guys, if I sound a little funky today, I've been fighting a cold all week and I've been trying to get over it, but you know what? The show must go on. So I guess I'm just gonna come here sounding as good as I possibly can under the circumstances. But getting back to our keyboard, so Gamdias is kind of a new company on the block. I mean, at least new to me, because I hadn't really heard about them until I saw some things from CES just recently. But I tell you what, they look like they've got some really impressive hardware. And so we're going to take a look at one of their keyboards for starters, and we're going to see what kind of quality they're doing, what kind of value they're going to offer us, and see if there's a little something to this mix of Greek mythology and computer components, because there might have something going on there. Let's go ahead, take a close look at the board. We'll actually look at some software this time, and then we'll talk about our testing impressions before we wrap this baby up. Alright, so here we have our keyboard plugged in, lit up, and let's point out some important things. So, Gamdias here has given us a super duper solid keyboard. So this base is just extremely, I mean, it feels like just really solid metal. We've got like kind of a nice, kind of like a darker, almost like a darker gray. I guess kind of a medium gray, but it has a good metallic tone to it. So it just looks really sharp. Everything about this keyboard screams of quality, guys. I'm not kidding you. I mean, this thing just feels like a brick. And it's been a long time since I've had a brick keyboard. In fact, the last brick keyboard I had, my cat puked on and destroyed it. So the fact that I haven't felt as many as this that are this solid is, to me, extremely impressive for a company that, you know, is not a huge name brand company. This wrist rest is solid on there. I mean, it doesn't move. It doesn't just, we'll turn this upside down here and look at it in a second. Gamdias also includes this little keycap puller, so I can actually just reach in and pull a cap off nice and easily, and then there you can see the nice lighting effects and stuff. And so it's pretty easy to get things off, get the keycaps off. So we, of course, once again, we've got these optical switches. They don't seem to really actuate until they hit the bottom. So, but there's only like a 2 millimeter distance on the bottom. So it's kind of interesting. They don't feel quite the same, because you kind of can feel that if you like to press your keys really hard, you're going to notice that bottom out real quick. But we have this blue switch that has like a nice clicky tactile feedback. Feels amazing for typing, a little strong for gaming, but you know, we'll get into a little more details about how the optical part of it feels in just a second. We also have a scroll wheel here that you can, of course, set to different things, but it defaults to volume when you first plug in the keyboard. So yeah, let's go ahead and flip this guy around real quick. Now, I always like to lean my keyboard out a little bit towards me. So really, I mean, this thing is just, we've got just a pretty straight, you know, plastic back on there, but it's just, there's just no bend and no play. Now, the only difficulty that you're going to have with this keyboard is if you're not a huge fan of the wrist rest, well, you're not going to have a lot of choice, because as you can see, it is definitely built into the keyboard. But, I mean, the nice thing about that is it's built into the keyboard. It doesn't move or flop around, and so I can pick it up and move it around without losing it. So, you know, that's kind of a thing that you have to keep an eye out on. But we've got some razors, or you can do it flat. I always like my keyboard raised up and angled towards me a little bit. So, yeah, there we go for a close look, guys. Also, braided black cable. Looks really nice, very kind of thick, really solid. This is just a super high quality keyboard, guys. So let's go ahead and talk about some software, and then we'll go to our testing. So guys, a lot of times I don't really go over drivers software a whole lot with keyboards and mice because, you know, it's pretty generic, but Gamdias has done some kind of interesting things, so I kind of want to point out. So here's kind of just the front page. We've got our key assignment and so on and so forth. And then you got your profiles. So you got a total of, you know, there's 6 profiles that we've got here on the screen. Now, if we go to profile 2, this is the one I started playing with. And so you can kind of see here, you know, this is really simple. You can reassign keys, and that's pretty generic. We go to the macro management. I got a little test macro here. So here I just did a quick basic record. And so it'll show you when you press the key down, how much delay it stays down, and then when it goes up, and then the delay between the next key press. So it's really specific. And then if you want to say, you know, customize this macro, you can pull this out, and then you can put a delay in here. So if I click here, I'll put a 10 millisecond delay, and I put it in the wrong spot, so I can just stick it back up there, and I can actually change what kind of delay speed I actually want. Then I can do seconds or milliseconds. So I was kind of impressed by that. I mean, I know that I'm sure Gamdias isn't the only one who can do this kind of macro work, but I like that. It was good. So if we come to the luminescence, here you can see you can do each individual key. So like if I want to take this, if I click this key, I can actually turn it on and off. Let me go to one that's a little bit bigger here. We'll go to space bar here. So there you go. I just turned off the space bar. Now if I want to turn it, I can make it blue, and it'll just take it a few seconds usually to come back. Oh, then you just click it to turn it back on. Let me turn my W key back on. Let's see here, I had, what was it? I had an order here where I just kind of randomly did all the different keys. So I can turn it to different colors, I can make it teal, I can make it the presets, can do just even a white. We can adjust our brightness here, just to make it dimmer or brighter. This keyboard's not very bright. Here we've got just static colors, so this will turn the whole keyboard one color versus, you know, all the other things. And then we have our actual lighting effects. So that's where I had the wave going at the beginning. Of course, I can do a breathing effect that'll do a color transition, or it can do a flat color. The neon one, if you turn the speed up, you can see it there where it'll just sort through the various things. So yeah, I'm going to just show you real quick what all these are actually doing. So it's not too bad. They got a lot of color options here. Ripple, of course, is when you press a key, it goes across. And so, and then there's the, everything just gradually turning off. Then that's just like a rotation that just keeps going through. And then, bam, marquee. So this will just do a line through the whole keyboard there. Then you change the color, all that fun stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's some pretty good customization I figured on that. So let's go over this next section. This is something that I thought was pretty cool. So I set a timer. And basically what this is this will give you, when you press a key, it'll tell you you pressed it and give you either a sound. So if I press play here, probably won't hear that, but there's an alarm that I can do when it presses, when I press the key, and they've got 5 different sounds here. Not gonna worry too much about that. Here's what's interesting. You can also do an on-screen display of a timer. So if I press the escape key right now, and you see it right here, I set this to be a 10-second timer. You could set this so that whenever you hit an important cooldown in a competitive game, that it'll always show that screen, so you'll know right when your cooldown comes up on a very important skill that you're using, which I thought was pretty cool. You can do the sound recorder where you can record your own sounds. Here's where you go to the timer settings. So I had to set the test. I had to check the on-screen display, OSD here, and then I set the time for 10 seconds. You can put the position. So if I put it in the top, then bam, there it is up top. If I put it in the bottom left corner, bam, there it is. So you can move it around the screen too. So that's pretty cool feature right there. I was pretty impressed by that. And then, of course, you've got an update screen. So there's the software. Let's go ahead now, talk about my testing impressions and gaming real quick, and then we can wrap this review up. All right, coming back to our close view here. Let's talk about what this keyboard is going to mean to you. What does optical switches actually mean, especially in gaming? For starters, we've got the blue switch. I'm always so torn because on one hand, the blue switch is a little bit louder. It's going to make a little more noise. You know, you're going to have that little bit of tactile feedback. At the same time, it was really interesting. So I played a lot of Battle Right with this keyboard, well, as much as I could. And I will say, so Gamdias doesn't advertise their optical switches for their latency benefits. But in doing research on optical switches, they're supposed to have about 30 milliseconds less latency than your typical mechanical switch. I think it's true, guys. Basically, what I was noticing is it felt like my skill shots in casting was a little more responsive. Now, the travel distance on the key, I could like it to be a little softer and so that I would have a quicker actuation point, I think. But I don't have a whole lot to compare on that level because 2 millimeters is not too bad. My Epic Gear keyboards that I was using previously, they had 1.5 millimeter actuation points, and they felt a lot better than my previous Kale Red switch and Cherry Red switches. So the fact that I felt another improvement over time, I thought was pretty cool. You know, once again, you're going to have some definite loud noise. These keys feel a little harder to press down than the average keyboard. I feel like they've just got a little bit of a actuation force to them than the average keyboard, regardless of how they're rated. But the keycaps feel extremely sturdy and solid. I mean, oh my goodness, these things just feel like they're going to last for forever. So I like this keyboard in gaming, and you know, whether you want a blue switch or not, you know, that's kind of up to preference. But I do think the optical is going to offer a benefit in competition. Let's go ahead and wrap this review up. So guys, I'm always struggling with concluding a review like this because I always got to question myself, is there such a thing as a product that's got too much quality? I mean, the answer to that seems to be no. But then again, you also have to factor in price. And that's kind of the situation here. The Hermes P2, you can find it on Newegg and Amazon, and it's a $150 keyboard in both sites, and that's pretty high. On the flip side, the keyboards it's competing with from companies, say like Razer and Corsair, it's actually right in line with their pricing schemes. And so you're looking at the things like, well, on one hand, oh my gosh, this keyboard, I can't say I've ever felt a higher quality keyboard. Now, I have not owned some of the big names. I have felt them before, and I would only make that judgment based on if I owned it for a certain amount of period, so I'd really get a feel. But at least compared to some of the other kind of more, I wouldn't call them off-brand companies, but smaller brand names than some of the big guys out there, Gamdias stands out big time. I mean, huge. Sure, you can't detach the key rest from the Hermes P2, but Gamdias offers a lot of different options, so I can't really count that against them, since if you don't want a key rest, you can get one of the other ones that doesn't have a wrist rest. And I'm thrilled to have a wrist rest that's solid and attached, because I hate flimsy wrist rests that keep falling off every time you move your keyboard. So it's kind of a preference thing. Really, here's the thing that it boils down to though. Optical switches are fantastic. Sure, if you're playing just normal games and it doesn't matter to have even milliseconds of reaction time, I probably wouldn't worry about it then so much. You know, a cherry switch is going to feel about as good. But in playing hyper-competitive games like MOBAs and first-person shooters, especially ones that have abilities that require cast times, I'm going to give it to the optical. And I think any gaming keyboard worth its salt is going to need to start moving that direction, because optical, killing that bit of latency, it's kind of a huge deal. So I'm going to go ahead and have to say that even though there's nothing that I can say specifically, hey, this keyboard's the best keyboard ever and you would definitely have to own it, because there's still a lot of competition out there, I also can't really say Gamdias is doing anything wrong. I've got no complaints. Their software was excellent. The keyboard feels great. The quality, oh man, quality is through the roof. So I'm going to give the Gamdias Hermes P2 a Pure Overclock Editor's Choice Award. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of this review. As always, just give me suggestions, comments. I love to hear the feedback. Like and subscribe if you want to, and I will catch you later.